Do you want to fish for carp in Russian Fishing 4 more than anything else? Then this is exactly the right tutorial for you. In this video, I will show you step by step how you can become a carp angler as fast as possible. Carp fishing in Russian Fishing 4 is extremely complex and can become overwhelming very quickly. Because of that, carp fishing in Russian Fishing 4 really only starts in the mid-game, so roughly around level 20, depending on how good your setup already is. And so that, on your way to the mid-game, meaning roughly up to level 20, you do not buy unnecessary rods and reels, and so that at level 20, you have enough silver available for carp fishing. You absolutely need to watch the basic tutorials. Watch the videos, what to buy until level 20, and then of course also the video what to buy at level 20, so that you have a clear goal to work toward, and so that you already know now how much silver you will need. So in this video, I am assuming that you already know the basics, and that I no longer need to explain the basic information about Russian Fishing 4 to you from this point on, so that we have enough time to really focus on the first steps of carp fishing. You start the game, and of course you begin with bottom fishing. That means you fish a lot here at Mosquito Lake, or of course also here at Winding Rivulet. And at these two waters, you mainly fish for rough or Dunnet's rough, but also for gudgeon, sleeper gobies, gibel carp, and crucian carp. So basically all fish where you have a high bite frequency, and especially with the rough, where you can earn a lot of silver. And the important thing is, alongside that, you are gaining percentages in bottom fishing. That is the alpha and omega. You simply have to make sure in the early game, meaning when you start with bottom fishing, that you regularly catch many fish, so that you get a lot of skill points in the bottom fishing skill. Because through these bottom fishing skills, you unlock the different rig types step by step, and we will need those later for carp fishing. Once you are above 30% in bottom fishing, it can happen that the percentages gained with each caught fish become smaller and smaller. That means over time, you need more and more fish just to get another 0.1 or 0.2% in bottom fishing. That is completely normal. This runs through the entire game, whether it is fishing methods, bait acquisition, or ground bait preparation. The higher you climb in a skill tree, the longer it takes to gain the next percentages. How you can best push ground bait preparation forward, there will also be a separate tutorial about that later on. At some point, you will of course reach level 12, and from level 12 onward, it makes absolutely no sense to immediately go to the Old Berg and start fishing there. From Old Berg onward, you should be able to use ground bait. That means, in reverse, if you have not yet skilled ground bait, you should not fish at Old Berg yet. Mosquito Lake and Winding Rivulet are far more worthwhile because at these two beginner waters, you can fish very successfully even without ground bait. How you fish there, and what you should already skill in this early phase, meaning how far you should skill ground bait and bait crafting, that is also already explained in the feeder tutorial. So I am now assuming that you have mastered these basics, that you have the information, and very important, that you fulfill the 3 most important points so that you can start carp fishing. Point number 1, you have a suitable setup for carp fishing. Ideally, the setup that is recommended in the mid-game video, what to buy from level 20. Without this setup, it is not worth going to Bear Lake and targeting carp specifically. Point number 2, you have enough percentages in bottom fishing. That means you have unlocked at least the classic hair rig. Ideally, you are already further along with snowman rigs or pop-up rigs, but the absolute minimum is the classic hair rig. And that is exactly the rig we will use to start fishing at Bear Lake. And yes, as just mentioned, point number 3 is ground bait preparation. If you cannot create ground bait for carp fishing, then it makes no sense to fish for carp at all. Compared to low-level waters, you earn significantly less silver, you get fewer skill points while fishing, and you simply catch fewer fish, which, of course, is boring. That means when you press the N key, go to feed mixes, you should ideally be able to craft the carp ground bait mixes. So peas as the base, maggots and corn, and vanilla as the aroma. And you should be able to craft this ground bait from level 4 onward. Level 5 is of course even better, with cornmeal as the base and hemp oil as the aroma, especially if later on we also want to fish for grass carp. If one of these 3 components is still missing for you, back to Mosquito Lake, back to Winding Rivulet, bottom fishing for the simple fish, and then make up for the missing component there. So either earn silver for the right setup, or continue skilling ground bait, or simply gain more percentages in the fishing method so that you can at least already use the classic hair rig. If you then have your first carp setup, but your other rods are maybe still the feeder setup start, then do not fish at Bear Lake yet, but instead you can fish extremely well here at Old Berg. That means you take 2 times your feeder setup start, you of course already use the appropriate ground bait mix, for example for tench or for bream fishing, and your first mid-game carp setup. With that setup, you then already fish on the side for bigger fish, meaning for common carp or for grass carp here at Old Berg. Once you then have the mid-game setup twice, then it is also worth going to Bear Lake. But before we go to Bear Lake, we go shopping one more time properly, because you of course know there is no tackle shop at Bear Lake. So shopping is done beforehand and we buy everything that we need for carp fishing. If you look at the classic hair rig, you can see that we can use sinking boilies and pellets here. That again means we now look in the tackle shop for sinking boilies and pellets. So we go to baits, then here to sinking boilies. And since we have an insanely large selection with many different flavors, I will now show you 6 different flavors that are absolutely sufficient for the start in carp fishing. So the first flavor that you buy for fishing at Bear Lake is, for example, raspberry flavor. We simply take fresh raspberry, and for the beginning, you should best make sure that you only buy sizes 14 to 18. So boilie or pellet sizes 14 to 18. The sizes below that are already very small, and the sizes above that are of course significantly larger. The advantage of smaller boilies is that when testing a spot, meaning testing which flavor works best, we get feedback faster with smaller boilies, whether the fish currently want the flavors being used. If we sit there with larger boilies, the feedback simply takes far too long. And especially as a beginner, you need feedback quite quickly, whether something works or not, so that you can already judge whether the flavors you are using are actually the ones the fish want right now. So we maybe buy 2 packs of raspberry size 16. We can see here clearly, in 1 pack we have 25 boilies inside. 25 boilies is maybe a bit little for 1 fishing session, so we take 2 packs. 50 boilies is already a pretty good start. The second flavor is then currant. Here we simply take black currant, in this case size 15. Here again I now buy 2 packs. Then we also take coconut and cream sinking, size 16, again 2 packs. And with cream, there is then a special case, meaning special boilies in the game, and those are the soluble boilies. These dissolving boilies can be found exclusively among the sinking boilies. Later on, in the progression of carp fishing, it is absolutely worth buying all flavors of these soluble boilies. The huge advantage is that these soluble boilies have an additional attraction effect. And when we later crush the boilies and add them to the ground bait mix, we also get this additional attraction effect inside the ground bait mix. For the beginning, however, the most important flavors here are also sweet cream and later on also crab and mussel. That means we now buy sweet cream 16 soluble, again 2 pieces. And if you want, you can of course combine that with sweet cream 16 as a normal boilie. Yes, and as already mentioned just now, we of course also take crab and mussel, and additionally also the normal mussel boilies. So now we have 6 different boilie flavors, And for these 6 different boilie flavors, we of course now also need the matching boilie dips. That again means that for all flavors we just bought, we also buy the matching dip. For crab and mussel, for example, you can take oyster and crab or only mussel as a dip. Then here we of course also have raspberry cream as a dip. And of course sometimes a dip is sold out. In this case it is cream. Then you of course travel to another water, ideally simply the level 1 waters, which all require no travel costs, and you check whether they also still have the cream dip. And with that, you then have the possibility to test a spot with 6 different flavor directions, meaning fishy flavors, fruity flavors, or also something creamy, fatty, so in different directions, to test the spot, or rather to test which preferences the fish currently have. And if you are already skilled far enough in bottom fishing that you have unlocked the pop-up rig, then ideally you also buy artificial corn and exactly the same flavors, simply here as corn kernels. This has the huge advantage that you have even smaller baits, and therefore get even faster feedback whether the fish actually like the flavor you are offering at that moment. So, we now start here at Bear Lake with everything we bought beforehand, so make sure before you go carp fishing that you go shopping first. All baits that you need and all components for the ground bait mix. And here at Bear Lake, there are 3 important spots for carp fishing, and these 3 spots we will now take a look at. Here as well, of course, the same rule applies. You can find spots everywhere across the entire water surface. So just as explained in the spot video, you can of course find different spots everywhere here with different preferences and fish populations. Despite that, over the last years, these 3 top spots have proven themselves again and again, and one of these 3 top spots always delivers fish. If you do not catch fish at any of these 3 spots, then it is guaranteed not because of the spots. The first spot is up here at 55-63. Here we cast over this small reed edge, or so to speak, to the tip, and usually at 21 to 23 meters. That means you land roughly in this area. And in this area, we have a bottom that is declared as a mussel bank. And such mussel banks are always a very good indicator in carp fishing that you may find different carp species more frequently at such a spot. So the mussel bank lies here roughly like a banana shape, once curved like this. And in this direction, we cast roughly into this area here, loosely casting out to 21 meters. A huge advantage when fishing here is that since we set the line clip at 21 meters, you can also cast your ground bait in ball form very easily. This here is the classic carp ground bait mix. And if you have enough energy and cast at maximum power, this ground bait flies roughly 20 meters far. With an effective radius of 2.5 meters, we are still within the effect range of the ground bait with our baits, which we cast out to 21 meters. This here is the second spot at 44.50. Also an absolute top spot, which works very well on a regular basis. This here is the position on the map, 44.50, and again between 21 and 23 meters. Here as well, especially at the beginning, it is recommended to choose 21 meters because exactly the same applies here as at the previous spot. You must be able to feed the spot with ground bait balls. So cast 21 meters behind the water lilies, and then you can decide whether you start casting more to the left, or rather more centrally, or over here slightly to the right, just behind the water lilies. Here as well, you will catch different fish depending on where exactly you cast. Despite that, this spot works really well again and again, and as mentioned, at 21 meters. So you can cast your ground bait at maximum power, just like at the previous spot, and still feed the spot sufficiently at 21 meters. And this here is the third spot. This is a spot that is not at 21 meters, but only at 17 meters. So we are located down here at 55-31. Here you cast only 17 meters far. Here as well, you can add a bit of variation, whether you cast into the reflection of the trees, meaning a bit further to the right, or roughly here more into this central area, or a bit further to the left toward these trees. You can roughly see the treetops here in the reflection. And if you want to cast ground bait here at 17 meters, you simply take a few steps backward, and then you have the possibility to cast the ground bait at maximum power exactly into this area. So exactly into the area where we then also place our baits at 17 meters. Why do we fish here at 17 meters and not like at the other spots at 21 meters? Of course, you can also simply fish here at the same spot at 21 meters and just test it. Testing spots is the most important thing in carp fishing anyway. So feel free to also test 21 meters here. 17 meters at this spot is simply because we have different bottom types here. Regarding spot analysis, how you test the bottom or how you determine distances, there will also be a separate spot analysis video where I will explain exactly how you can analyze such a spot. So we set the line clip to 17 meters. From experience, I can already tell you at 17 meters distance here at this spot, we have clay as the bottom. Accordingly, you of course also build your setup to match. That again means you buy your lead in clay colors and you also choose the lid core, meaning the lead core leader in clay color as well. And as a third component, you of course also build a matching leader, namely a feeder leader with a length between 25 and 40 centimeters. And all of this of course made from proper carp leader material. Here you can then choose whether you use the leader in camo red or in brown, similar to the clay color. Camo red has the advantage that it works very well at many different spots and is generally a very good choice for carp fishing. So, we have now assembled our setup, matching lead core, matching lead, and matching leader. Now for testing the spot, we choose a size 6 hook. At the beginning, use rather smaller hooks, size 6 hooks or size 4 hooks. Especially in combination with smaller boilies and pellets, you get a very good yield with this. That means you catch a lot of fish, progress faster in bottom fishing, and of course also earn good silver. Later on in the progression, it is worth buying the size 1 hook for carp fishing, and then using the larger boilies with it. So the size 1 hook in combination with size 20 boilies also works very well again. So for testing, I now use the size 6 hook, and I use here the size 16 soluble sweet cream boilie. And under the dips, we of course also choose cream as the dip. With that, the first setup is now complete. We place it aside here, and then in the meantime, assemble our next setups. So I have now assembled all 3 rods. We take another quick look. So the first setup here with sweet cream soluble and the cream dip, the second setup with fresh raspberry and the raspberry dip, and the third setup with crab, mussel soluble, and the mussel dip. That means we now have 3 different flavors, but also completely different categories, from creamy and fatty to fruity to fishy flavors. So with that, we now cover 3 different flavor directions. And now we cast out here to 17 meters. For me, the happy hour is even starting right now. So the second rod also goes out again to 17 meters. And the third setup with crab and mussel, we also cast loosely out to 17 meters. And the first thing we now do is to test which fish are at the spot and what preferences the fish have. And before we know that, we of course do not throw in any ground bait mix. We only throw in ground bait after we already know whether fish are there and which fish are there. And based on that, we can then decide which ground bait we throw in and whether we maybe optimize the ground bait further toward a specific flavor. We will of course take a closer look at that in a moment. Yes, we are of course using small hooks here. Accordingly, smaller fish will bite sometimes. But as mentioned for testing, this is extremely important so that we get very fast feedback on which flavor works best. Also, pay attention to how a change in weather affects your spot. It can absolutely happen that after a weather change, your fish suddenly no longer want to bite, or that it is related to the time of day. And that of course is also absolutely crucial. If you go to a carp spot at midday and then wonder why nothing is happening, that is completely normal because the fish may simply not be very active at that time. That means if you go carp fishing at midday, definitely wait with your bait combinations until the evening hours. If no fish bites in the evening hours and into the night, then it is of course time to rebuild your setup for the morning hours so that you can test the spot again in the morning with new flavors. So this is exactly what I'm looking at now. We are currently in the evening hours, so I will now wait until after 23 o'clock, and only then will I decide which setup I will rebuild. At the moment, it is like this. I will rebuild raspberry and mussel, and I will leave the cream as it is for now. Because cream is at least already delivering fish. Even if they are small, it is still delivering fish. Yes, and that is how you move forward step by step. The most important thing in carp fishing is to analyze what preferences the fish have and how you can then expand and optimize these preferences even further. And we do that, of course, through the preparation of ground bait. So, here you have the original carp ground bait. Use this ground bait. This ground bait gives you the possibility to use all flavors as bait without the ground bait influencing the bait itself. You can, of course, prepare a ground bait that already has cream components included from the start. But then it may be a bit difficult if you later want to fish the same spot with fruity flavors or mussel flavors. The huge advantage of this basic, neutral ground bait is that you can first use and test all baits as flavors. And once you then realize, like in my case right now, that cream works best, then we take these components, meaning peas, maggots, corn, and vanilla, go up here to the ground bait menu, and simply rebuild these components one to one. Why is this rebuilt? Because you now have 2 additional slots available. And into these 2 additional slots, we can then add flavors that further match our bait. Or we simply add flavors that are generally more interesting for carp fishing. For example, we could additionally add peas again, or of course also components from the grocery shop. That was also another hint from the last Q&A with Russian Fishing 4, that you should definitely use more components from the grocery shop. Since cream is working quite well right now, I now simply take milk powder and as another component, sweet cream feed pellets. And just like that, I now have a ground bait mix aimed at carp with components that match my bait. So in this case, creamy or milky flavors. Additionally, you could now also change the aroma to push even more in the direction of cream, or you simply keep using the basic ground bait mix and only use cream as the aroma. That is, of course, also possible. You keep the base as it is, and at the end, align all base components once more toward the bait. Yes, it is now after 23 o'clock. The cream is obviously still working, but I think there was also a reaction back there on the mussel setup. Well, look at that, even the biting here on cream. That would of course now also be an option because we also have a ground bait mix specifically for barbel. And we could now also introduce the original barbel ground bait here. But I would say we only decide that once we know what exactly is bitten here, because this here is now our fishy flavor. Here we have crab and mussel soluble with the mussel dip, and it's quite possible that a large barbel is biting here right now. And accordingly, you would then want to keep your ground bait aroma more neutral so that you can continue fishing both cream and mussel at the spot. Well, that is probably not a barbel, but rather a mirror carp. We slowly net it out here, so very nice. It turned out to be a 6-kilogram mirror carp. We will gladly take that as well. Now we know, for example, that we have barbel at the spot, but also mirror carp at the spot. And accordingly, you can now decide, what do you want to focus on? Do you maybe build everything more toward the fishy aroma or further toward cream? Fishy aroma would of course also be interesting for fishing for barbel. In this case, I would actually now continue more in the direction of fishy aroma and then eventually rebuild all 3 rods completely toward this fishy aroma and try to optimize that. Yes, and finally, something is now actually also biting on the fruit component. So all 3 aromas are currently delivering. That is not tragic at all. That simply means that we have a large selection here. Hey, something very big again. So if all aromas are working right now, that is actually not bad at all. That means I will leave it like this for now, and I will first continue testing without ground bait until I know which fish are all at the spot. Only then will I decide to expand everything further so that we can then catch more fish of one specific species. Yes, the fish really wanted it now. So you do need a bit of patience. At the beginning, lower the drag a bit, let the fish pull for a while, and then slowly bring it closer. So, well, it looks like I was fishing here with a setup that is too small. And indeed, I am standing here carp fishing with only 6.8 kilograms of capacity. You probably noticed that immediately during the video, but of course you learn from that, especially when you have a monster fight with a 4-kilogram grass carp. So much for the introduction to carp fishing. If this helped you, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, because that helps me as well. And remember, there will be more tutorials coming soon in the respective playlists for the different fishing methods. So, we will see each other in the next video or in the next live stream. Until then, tight lines.